Hi, my lovies. Welcome back. Today we are continuing our reading series in the book All About Love by Bell Hooks, one of my favorite books of all time, if not the favorite. It's so insightful, so impactful, and if you've been reading along with me so far, you know that it talks about the hard, touchy topics. And I'm sharing them with you because I think they're important. By no means do I agree with every single little thing that she says, but I think the ideas presented and the way she gets us to think about these topics are important and needed, and we need to talk about them and think about them even if it's uncomfortable. So if you haven't checked out the previous chapters, go watch those videos first. I'll put a little link to it in the video here, but today we are getting into chapter 4, which is commitment. Let love be love in me. This is a quote by M. Scott Peck, which she has quoted several times now. Commitment is inherent in any genuinely loving relationship. Anyone who is truly concerned for the spiritual growth of another knows consciously or instinctively that he or she can significantly foster that growth only through a relationship of constancy. It's from M. Scott Peck. I love how it casts the light on my face. It's ah. Wait, that's so hilarious. Ah. Okay, anyways. Commitment to truth telling lays the groundwork for the openness and honesty that is the heartbeat of love. When we can see ourselves as we truly are and accept ourselves, we build the necessary foundation for self-love. We have all heard the maxim, if you do not love yourself, you will be unable to love anyone else. It sounds good, yet more often than not, we feel some degree of confusion when we hear this statement. The confusion arises because most people who think they are not lovable have this perception because at some point in their lives they were socialized to see themselves as unlovable by forces outside their control. We are not born knowing how to love anyone, either ourselves or somebody else. However, we are born able to respond to care. As we grow, we can give and receive attention, affection, and joy. Whether we learn how to love ourselves and others will depend on the presence of a loving environment. Self-love cannot flourish in isolation. I use that quote a lot. That is one of my most quotable parts of this book, and it stuck with me, so it's funny. I didn't realize it was coming so soon. Self-love cannot flourish in isolation. It is no easy task to be self-loving. Simple axioms that make self-love sound easy only make matters worse. It leaves many people wondering why, if it is so easy, they continue to be trapped by feelings of low self-esteem or self-hatred. Using a working definition of love that tells us it is the action we take on behalf of our own or another's spiritual growth provides us with a beginning blueprint for working on the issue of self-love. When we see love as a combination of trust, commitment, care, respect, knowledge, and responsibility, we can work on developing these qualities, or, if they are already a part of who we are, we can learn to extend them to ourselves. Many people find it helpful to critically examine the past, particularly childhood, to chart their internalization of messages that they were not worthy, not enough, that they were crazy, stupid, monstrous, and so on. Simply learning how we have acquired feelings of worthlessness rarely enables us to change things. It is usually only one stage in the process. I, like so many other people, have found it useful to examine negative thinking and behavioral patterns learned in childhood, particularly those shaping my sense of self and identity. However, this process alone did not ensure self-recovery. It was not enough. I share this because it is far too easy to stay stuck in simply describing, telling one's story over and over again, which can be a way of holding on to grief about the past or holding on to a narrative that places blame on others. While it is important for us to understand the origins of fragile self-esteem, it is also possible to bypass this stage, identifying when and where we receive negative socialization, and still create a foundation for building self-love. Individuals who bypass this stage tend to move on to the next stage, which is actively introducing into our lives constructive, life-affirming thought patterns and behavior. Whether a person remembers the details of being abused is not important. When the consequence of that abuse is a feeling of worthlessness, they can still engage in a process of self-recovery by finding ways to affirm self-worth. The wounded heart learns self-love by first overcoming low self-esteem. Nathaniel Branden's lengthy work, 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, highlights important dimensions of self-esteem. The practice of living consciously, self-acceptance, self-responsibility, self-assertiveness, living purposely, and the practice of personal integrity. Living consciously means we think critically about ourselves and the world we live in. We dare to ask ourselves the basic questions: who, what, when, where, and why. Answering these questions usually provides us with a level of awareness that enlightens. Brandon contends, to live consciously means to seek to be aware of everything that bears on our actions, purposes, values, and goals, to the best of our ability, whatever that ability may be, and to behave in accordance and with that which we see and know. To live consciously, we have to engage in critical reflection about the world we live in and know most intimately. Usually it is through reflection that individuals who have not accepted themselves make the choice to stop listening to negative voices within and outside the self that constantly reject and devalue them. Affirmations work for anyone striving for self-acceptance. Although I had for years been interested in therapeutic modes of healing and self-help, affirmations always seemed to be a bit corny. My sister, who was then working as a therapist in the field of chemical dependency, encouraged me to give affirmations a try to see if I would experience any concrete changes in my outlook. I wrote affirmations relevant to my daily life and began to repeat them in the morning as part of my daily meditations. At the top of my list was the declaration, I'm breaking with old patterns and moving forward with my life. I not only found them to be a tremendous energy boost, a way to kick off the day by my accentuating the positive, I also found it useful to repeat them during the day if I felt particularly stressed or was falling into the abyss of negative thinking. Affirmations helped restore my emotional equilibrium. Self-acceptance is hard for many of us. There is a voice inside that is constantly judging, first ourselves, then others. That voice enjoys the indulgence of an endless negative critique. Because we have learned to believe negativity is more realistic, it appears more real than any positive voice. Once we begin to replace negative thinking with positive thinking, it becomes utterly clear that far from being realistic, negative thinking is absolutely disenabling. When we are positive, we not only accept and affirm ourselves, we are able to affirm and accept others. The more we accept ourselves, the better prepared we are to take responsibility in all areas of our lives. Commenting on this 3rd pillar of self-esteem, Brandon defines self-responsibility as the willingness to take responsibility for my actions and the attainment of my goals for my life and well-being. Taking responsibility does not mean that we deny the reality of institutionalized injustice. For example, racism, sexism, and homophobia all create barriers and concrete incidents of discrimination. Simply taking responsibility does not mean that we can prevent discriminatory acts from happening, but we can choose how we respond to acts of injustice. Taking responsibility means that in the face of barriers, we still have the capacity to invent our lives, to shape our destinies in ways that maximize our well-being. Every day, we practice this shape-shifting to cope with realities we cannot easily change. Many women are married to men who were unsupportive when they decided to further their educations. Most of these women did not leave the men in their lives. They engaged in constructive strategies of resistance. One woman I spoke with was inhibited because her husband worked in a plant and she felt uncomfortable having more education than he did. Yet she wanted to re-enter the workforce and needed an advanced degree to do so. She made the choice to take responsibility for her needs and desires, believing it would also enhance the well-being of her family. Returning to work boosted our self-esteem and changed the passive-aggressive rage and depression that had developed as a consequence of her isolation and stagnation. Making this decision and finding ways to realize it was not an easy process, however. Her husband and children were often disgruntled when her independence forced them to accept more household responsibility. In the long run, everyone benefited, and it goes without saying that these changes boosted her self-esteem in ways that showed her how self-love made it possible to extend herself in a constructive way to others. She was happier, and so were those around her. In order to make these changes, she had to make use of another vital aspect of self-esteem, self-assertiveness, defined by Brandon as the willingness to stand up for myself, to be who I am openly, to treat myself with respect in all human encounters. Since many of us were shamed in childhood, either in our families of origin or in school settings, a learned pattern of going along with the program and not making a fuss is the course of action we most frequently choose as a way to avoid conflict. As children, conflict was often the setting for put-downs and humiliation, the place where we were shamed. Our attempts at self-assertion failed as an adequate defense. Many of us learned that passivity lessened the possibility of attack. Sexist socialization teaches females that self-assertiveness is a threat to femininity. Accepting this faulty logic lays the groundwork for low self-esteem. The fear of being self-assertive usually surfaces in women who have been trained to be good girls or dutiful daughters. In our childhood home, my brother was never punished for talking back. Asserting his opinions was a positive sign of manhood. Lost my spot. When my sisters and I voiced our opinions, we were told by our parenting adults that this was negative and undesirable behavior. We were told, especially by our dad, that female self-assertion was not feminine. We did not listen to these warnings. Even though ours was a patriarchal household, the fact that females far outnumbered the two males, my dad and my brother, made it safe for us to speak our minds, to talk back. Luckily, by the time we were young adults, the feminist movement had come along and validated that having a voice and being self-assertive was necessary for building self-esteem. One reason women have traditionally gossiped more than men is because gossip has been a social interaction wherein women have felt comfortable stating what they really think and feel. Often, rather than asserting what they think at the appropriate moment, women say what they think will please the listener. Later, they gossip, stating that at that moment their true thoughts. This division between a false self invented to please others and a more authentic self need not exist when we cultivate positive self-esteem. Thought I had my water nearby. The feminist movement really helped women understand the personal power that is gained through positive self-assertiveness. Gloria Steinem's bestseller, Revolution from Within, cautioned women about the danger of achieving success without doing the necessary groundwork for self-love and self-esteem. She found that achieving women who still suffered internalized self-hatred invariably acted out in ways that undermined their success. And if the self-hating successful person did not act out, she may have lived a life of private desperation, unable to tell anyone success does not, in fact, reverse crippled self-esteem. To complicate matters, women feel the need to pretend that they are self-loving, to assert confidence and power to the outside world, and as a consequence, they feel psychologically conflicted and disengaged from their true being. Shamed by the feeling that they can never let anyone know who they really are, they may choose isolation and aloneness for fear of being unmasked. This is true of men as well. When powerful men reach the height of personal achievement in their careers, they often undermine all they have worked for by engaging in self-destructive behavior. Men who reside at the bottom of our nation's economic totem pole do this, and so do men at the top. President Clinton engaged in deceitful behavior, betraying both his personal commitments to his family as well as political commitment to be a paragon of American values to the people of his country. He did so when his popularity was at an all-time high. Having spent so much of his life achieving against the odds, his actions expose a fundamental flaw in his self-esteem. Although he is a white male, Ivy League educated, and economically well off, privileged with all the accompanying perks, his irresponsible actions were a way of unmasking, of showing to the world that he really was not the good guy. He was pretending to be. He created the context for a public shaming that no doubt mirrors moments of childhood shaming when some authority figure in his life made him feel he was worthless and that he would never be worthy no matter what he did. Anyone who suffers from low self-esteem can learn by his example. If we succeed without confronting and changing shaky foundations of low self-esteem rooted in contempt and hatred, we will falter along the way. It is no accident that living purposely is the sixth element of self-esteem. According to Brandon, it entails taking responsibility for consciously creating goals, identifying the actions necessary to achieve them, making sure our behavior is in alignment with our goals, and paying attention to the outcome of our actions so that we see whether they are leading us where we want to go. Most people are concerned about living purposefully when it comes to choosing the work we do. Unfortunately, many workers feel they have very little freedom of choice when it comes to work. Most people do not grow up learning that the work we choose to do will have a major impact on our capacity to be self-loving. Work occupies much of our time. Doing work we hate assaults our self-esteem and self-confidence, yet most workers cannot do the work they love. But we can all enhance our capacity to live purposely by learning how to experience satisfaction in whatever work we do. We find that satisfaction by giving any job total commitment. When I had a teaching job I hated, the kind of job where you long to be sick so you have an excuse for not going to work, the only way I could ease the severity of my pain was to give my absolute best. This strategy enabled me to live purposely. Doing a job well, even if we do not enjoy what we are doing, means that we leave it with a feeling of well-being, our self-esteem intact. That self-esteem aids us when we go in search of a job that can be more fulfilling. Throughout my life, I have endeavored to not only do work I enjoy, but to work with individuals I respect, like, or love. When I first declared my desire to work in a loving environment, friends acted as though I had truly lost my mind. To them, love and work did not go together, but I was convinced that I would work better in a work environment shaped by an ethic of love. Today, as the Buddhist concept of right livelihood is more widely understood, more people embrace the belief that work that enhances our spiritual well-being strengthens our capacity to love. And when we work with love, we create a loving working environment. Whenever I enter an office, I can immediately sense by the overall atmosphere and mood whether the workers like what they do. Marcia Sinitar writes about this concept in her book, Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow, as a way to encourage readers to take the risk of choosing work they care about, and therefore learning through experience the meaning of right livelihood. While there are many meaningful insights in Sinitar's book, or Sinitar, it is equally true that we can do what we love and money will not always follow. While this is utterly disappointing, it can also offer us the experiential awareness that doing what you love may be more important than making money. Sometimes, as has been the case in my life, I've had to work at a job that is less enjoyable in order to have the means to do the work I love. At one point, in a very mixed job career, I worked as a cook in a club. I hated the noise and the smoke, but working nights left me free to write in the day, to do the work I truly wanted to do. Each experience enhanced the value of the other. My nighttime work helped me relish the quiet serenity of my day and enjoy the alone time so essential to writing. Whenever possible, it is best to seek work we love and to avoid work we hate, but sometimes we learn what we need to avoid by doing it. Individuals who are able to be economically self-sufficient doing what they love are blessed. Their experience serves as a beacon to all of us, showing the ways right livelihood can strengthen self-love, ensuring peace and contentment in the lives we lead beyond work. Often, workers believe that if their home life is good, it does not matter if they feel dehumanized and exploited on the job. Many jobs undermine self-love because they require that workers constantly prove their worth. Individuals who are dissatisfied and miserable on the job bring this negative energy home. Clearly, much of the violence in domestic life, both physical and verbal abuse, is linked to job misery. We can encourage friends and loved ones to move toward greater self-love by supporting them in any effort to leave work that assaults their well-being. Folks who are out of the paid workforce, women and men who do unpaid work in the home, as well as all other happily unemployed people, are often doing what they want to do. While they are not rewarded by an income, their day-to-day life often provides more satisfaction than it would if they worked at a high-paying job in a stressful and dehumanizing environment. Satisfied homemakers, both women and the rare men who have chosen to stay home, have a lot to teach us all about the joy that comes from self-determination. They are their own bosses, setting the terms of their labor and the measure of their reward. More than any of us, they have the freedom to develop right livelihood. Most of us did not learn when we were young that our capacity to be self-loving would be shaped by the work we do and whether that work enhances our well-being. No wonder, then, that we have become a nation where so many workers feel bad. Jobs depress the spirit. Rather than enhancing self-esteem, work is perceived as a drag, a negative necessity. Bringing love into the work environment can create the necessary transformation that can make any job we do, no matter how menial, a place where workers can express the best of themselves. When we work with love, we renew the spirit. That renewal is an act of self-love. It nurtures our growth. It's not what you do, but how you do it. In the Knitting Sutra, Susan Leiden describes the labor of knitting as a freely chosen craft that enhances her awareness of the value of right livelihood, sharing, "What I found in this tiny domestic world of knitting is endless. It runs broader and deeper than anyone might imagine. It is infinite and seemingly inexhaustible in its capacity to inspire, excite, and provoke creative insight." Leiden sees the world that we have traditionally thought of as woman's work as a place to discover godliness through the act of creating domestic bliss. A blissful household is one where love can flourish. Creating domestic bliss is especially useful for individuals living alone who are just learning to be self-loving. When we intentionally strive to make our homes places where we are ready to give and receive love, every object we place there enhances our well-being. I create themes for my different homes. My flat in the city has the theme Love's Meeting Place. As a small town person moving to a big city, I found that I needed my environment to truly feel like a sanctuary. Since my one-bedroom flat is so much smaller than the places I'd been accustomed to living in, I decided to take only objects I truly loved, the things I felt I could not do without. It is amazing how much stuff you can just let go of. My country place has a desert theme. I call it Soledad Hermosa, beautiful solitude. I go there to be quiet and still and to experience the divine, to be renewed. Of all the chapters for this book, this one was the most difficult to write. When I talked with my friends and acquaintances about self-love, I was surprised to see how many of us feel troubled by the notion, as though the very idea implies too much narcissism or selfishness. We all need to rid ourselves of misguided notions about self-love. We need to stop fearfully equating it with self-centeredness and selfishness. Self-love is the foundation of our loving practice. Without it, our other efforts to love fail. Giving ourselves love, we provide our inner being with the opportunity to have the unconditional love we may have always longed to receive from someone else. Whenever we interact with others, the love we give and receive is always necessarily conditional. Although it is not impossible, it is very difficult and rare for us to be able to extend unconditional love to others, largely because we cannot exercise control over the behavior of someone else, and we cannot predict or utterly control our responses to their actions. We can, however, exercise control over our own actions. We can give ourselves the unconditional love that is the grounding for sustained acceptance and affirmation. When we give this precious gift to ourselves, we are able to reach out to others from a place of fulfillment and not from a place of lack. One of the best guides to how to be self-loving is to give ourselves the love we are often dreaming about receiving from others. There was a time when I felt lousy about my over 40 body, saw myself as too fat, too this or too that, yet I fantasized about finding a lover who would give me the gift of being loved as I am. It is silly, isn't it, that I would dream of someone else offering to me the acceptance and affirmation I was withholding from myself. This was a moment when the maxim, "you can never love anybody if you are unable to love yourself," made clear sense. And I add, do not expect to receive the love from someone else you do not give yourself. In an ideal world, we would all learn in childhood to love ourselves. We would grow, being secure in our worth and value, spreading love wherever we went, letting our light shine. If we did not learn self-love in our youth, there is still hope. The light of love is always in us, no matter how cold the flame. It is always present, waiting for the spark to ignite, waiting for the heart to awaken and call us back to the first memory of being the life force inside a dark place waiting to be born, waiting to see the light. That's so sweet. I think this is one of my favorite chapters in this book because I love this idea that the love and the affection and the things that we're craving to hear from others, to feel from others, and I say this all the time, it was never meant to be given from someone else. If we're desiring it, it's because a part of us knows that we are able to give ourselves that gift. And I also think it's beautiful that she said that the only person that can love you unconditionally is you. I think that's very sweet. It's a lot of what I base my whole life around and my personal self-love journey. So that's a great chapter. I'm curious what your thoughts are. As always, let's have a convo about it in the comments. I appreciate you guys. I honestly was not anticipating how many of you have been interested in reading along with this series with me. It's been so beautiful and wonderful to be a part of, and I love reading you guys' comments and your thoughts. But yeah, stay tuned for chapter 5. Make sure you're subscribing if you're not already. You've got post notifications on so you know when the next chapter drops. And give us a little like. Help me grow on YouTube. I'm still a newbie. I'm growing. Working on it. Thank you guys. I'll see you next time.